Thérèse Samuel. My name is Thérèse Samuel. I use the pronouns she and her, and I serve as Minister for Right Relations and Social Justice in the three regions of Western Ontario: Waterways, Antler River Watershed, and Horseshoe Falls. And I invite us to begin our time together with some time of acknowledgement of territory and prayer, which will be kind of woven together as one. And at one point during the acknowledgement of territory, you will be invited, if you wish, to unmute and speak the names of Indigenous nations, peoples on whose lands you are. You may be Indigenous yourself, or more of us are non-Indigenous, as I am, and have come either as settlers or under settler immigration policies. And so together, um, let us acknowledge the territory and recognize the presence of Creator, great God who is with us. Amid all that is happening in the world, it is good to pray for peace. And peace starts with who we are and where we are. So we start our prayer with an acknowledgement of the land where we are. Take a moment to notice the land where you are. Notice the relationships with the land and your relationships on the land. As Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples, let our acknowledgement of the territory be woven into our prayer for peace. As we bring a prayerful awareness to the first peoples of the land. Ancestors of those who are here now. And those who are here now. Remember how from time immemorial, Indigenous peoples have tended this land, lived on it, expressed spirituality, raised families, communities. Created cultures and languages. Let us remember how newcomers to this land brought new relationships. Some of those relationships were healthy, but some of them were so disruptive that we now understand these actions in these relationships to be genocide, cultural genocide. And there is pain because of this. We are all hurting, Indigenous and non-Indigenous, and the land and the creatures. Let us take a moment now to unmute and speak into the space names of Indigenous nations who are the first peoples of the land where we are now.
I guess I'll go.
Traditional territories of the Blackfoot Confederacy. Which includes Siksika, Piikani, Kainai Nations.
Anishinaabe,
and Stoney Nakoda Nation.
Erie Nation, and Miigwech.
Between
Haudenosaunee, Wendat, Anishinaabe, Treaty 13 lands.
And we take a moment to speak into the space, if we have not already, names of treaties and agreements that have been made. as part of our prayer. Treaty 18 of 1818.
Treaty 13.
Treaty 7.
Treaty 13.
Fish with one spoon, wampum agreement.
McKee Treaty number 2, 1790.
As we offer all that we have named and acknowledge all of who we have named and acknowledged, let us pray for God, the creator of all, to guide us in ways of right relations, to enlighten us to our place, our role in bringing about reconciliation in this time when reconciliation is a dream, an aspiration, a prayer. May it also be a path on which we are embarking and engaging. And we continue our prayer, oh God, turning to the notion of truth. We recognize that you have given each of us a piece of truth, but that truth is much greater than what any of us knows, except you, O God. And so in our pursuit for truth, in our listening for and engaging with one another on truth, may we be open to your Spirit, who sheds the light of your love on our hearts that we may know truth. Your Spirit who brings to us the awareness of the Christ who is your presence in us and in all of creation. And may we open ourselves to your Spirit who draws us together in community, in love, in the oneness of your grace. Oh, great God, we offer these prayers as we enter into our discussion today. In your great name we pray, Creator, Word, and Spirit, one. Amen. And friends, in the light of God's love, we move into the discussion of the day. And I'm really glad to introduce to you Sarah Speaker, sorry, my best German, Speicher. Sarah
good.
Speicher, who has over 30 years experience in communication and human rights advocacy for international nonprofit organizations. Sarah is currently the Deputy General Secretary for the World Association for Christian Communication, WACC, in which she works particularly on digital and gender justice initiatives, including addressing tech-facilitated gender-based violence. Sarah grew up. Sarah, I'm going to invite you, if you're not speaking, to make sure that you're muted. Sarah grew up in the United States, worked for 7 years in Geneva, Switzerland, and now lives in the UK. And I experienced Sarah offering this workshop, or a version of this workshop, with our Presbyterian brothers, sisters, and siblings a few months ago. And and immediately knew that this was something that we needed to share amongst ourselves in the United Church. And so I'm really glad, Sarah, to welcome you today and to engage with you on the topic of recognizing misinformation and disinformation. Turn it over to you. Oh, and I'm just for one moment, I'm going to take a moment to introduce to everybody Michelle Pettick. Michelle Pettick is is our tech host for today, and she will be guiding us through if there are any technical problems or concerns or needs in the day. You may hear Michelle speaking up. So thank you, Michelle. I apologize, Sarah Schweika, but I turn it over to you now.
Practicing very well. Thank you so much, Thérèse. I mean, thank you for the invitation to share this information again. But I also want to thank all of you for your interest in addressing this critical topic in our information society these days. This is essentially, yes, recognizing misinformation and disinformation, but also what to do about it. I'm coming from the standpoint and the perspective of WACC, which was founded in 1968 by Christian broadcasters concerned about the ethics of mass media. At that time, it was TV and radio, newspapers, concerned about the concentration of power in this messaging, the impact of propaganda, the access to reliable information, the affordability of media channels. I mean, does this all sound familiar? Because while communication technologies have changed, the fundamental ethical and the rights principles have remained. Misinformation and disinformation are major challenges in our societies, and they happen in a complex, an ever more complex information ecosystem, which is why tackling them is not just as easy as saying, well, that's wrong, here's the facts. Now, as we get into this presentation, I'd like you to put into the chat an indication of why you signed up for this workshop. So there are 3 statements, and you could choose what statement most accurately reflects your concern right now. And my challenge is I don't see the chat anymore, but I'll work on that one. So the first statement, you know, I've fallen for misinformation online and I want to learn better how to spot it. So it's, you know, I'm really looking for my personal information. I think family and friends are falling for misinformation and I want to learn more about how to help them. Is that the primary concern? Or I think misinformation is becoming so prevalent and I'm, you know, not sure how our society is going to cope and I just want to learn more. Is that most prevalent? I mean, and if it's not those 3, then choose a D. Because, yeah, actually for all of the above, yes, that's okay. Yeah, so a lot of it is an overall concern about society. Yeah.
That's what I'm seeing, Sarah. It's Michelle
Yeah.
speaking.
Thank you.
So I like Jennifer's actual number 4, all of the above.
Yep. It is something that feels like it really is destabilizing a lot of our political, our economic, our cultural, societal work. So what we're covering today is kind of laying out a big picture for our news and our information landscape. And then it sets a context for misinformation, disinformation. And then to look at concrete ideas on how you address it, with, I hope, sufficient time for sharing in small groups, some reflections, and then sharing all together. And then we'll close it with some resources to take this farther. So
If I can just let people know right now that this slideshow will be sent to everybody who registered for this. So
we'll start with some definitions. Misinformation. So the difference between misinformation and disinformation is largely about intention. Misinformation is incomplete, it's inaccurate, it's misleading content, but it's shared by people who don't realize that it is incomplete, inaccurate, or misleading. So one can call it a mistake, misinformation. So here's one example of one that came around recently. I'm not sure who created this post about, Canada sharing a suicide hotline with, US citizens who were cut off from that. But the feed Occupied Democrats is, in my mind, a classic questionable source of accurate news. But they shared this thinking it was correct. They thanked Canada. Thank you, Canada. But it's not. So we could think that this type of misinformation is not a very serious concern and wouldn't seem to have, a major disruptive impact, but it does kind of depend on what's shared. Now, here's another recent post, which could have been a translation mistake, where they're quoting something wrongly from a news that Iran is saying there is going to be a great surprise occur, one that the world will remember. Now, you could imagine that there might be, in this current state of affairs, some serious reactions to a statement like that, particularly because it was picked up by some reasonable news agencies. But it wasn't picked up widely by news agencies like BBC or AP or Reuters. And if this really was accurate, it would have been major breaking news. But it could have had consequences. So misinformation can have consequences, and it can build on each other. Now, disinformation is false and inaccurate information that is intentionally created and spread to mislead or manipulate people. It is often intended to sow mistrust. It may not be intended to really be believed, but it is intended to make people less trustful of certain sources of information and therefore more susceptible to being steered in a certain way or to ignore sources of information. With generative AI these days, I think we also have this growing source of disinformation that people might feel is just entertaining. I can create this false video. I can manipulate this. But it can also have a similar effect of making people question what's true. Disinformation doesn't have to be about war or conflict to be serious. I mean, there have been a lot of Pope Leo XIV hoax sermons and quotes, which can seem harmless, but with others, it's kind of this zinger that they're still trying to destabilize perhaps some thinking or a group of people, or they're trying to build on somebody's reputation to get their point across. So often, disinformation takes a grain of truth and twists it. I might say within this quote of Pope Leo, people believed it because it sounds like very close to some of the things that he said. And I've seen other people justify, no, he said this. He said, well, up until the last point, he said this. Well, he actually didn't. So when it has a grain of truth and twists it, it's also called malinformation. It's bad information. And when that happens, the explanations can be more complicated than the original claim. Trump is great about this. He can just take something a little bit that has a little grain of truth and says, oh, well, the Federal Bureau is only giving you 750 US dollars for this emergency response. Well, that's true, but in the first instance. But more money would be available later. But whenever you say yes, but, it's, of course, harder to get across than the original dramatic headline. So propaganda. Propaganda is certainly disinformation, but it's typically more organized and systemic. It's like a campaign, and it's designed to influence public opinion. So it's most often used in reference to governments or other organizations. Fake news. I mean, that's a popular term. And frankly, now when someone says something is fake news, I usually think that it's probably pretty accurate and they just don't like it. Deep fakes, helped by generative AI, are images and sound that are manipulated to a quality that's harder to spot as fakes. And that is something that is deeply concerning now. It's just getting better and better. Rage bait is sharing something you know is false only to generate outrage and take up media space, and usually for making money. So part of this essential challenge that we face with all of these is that it's a lot easier to make people believe something is fake than to convince them that it's not. Now, do people have the right to say anything they want? The right to freedom of expression is enshrined in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and the Canadian Charter. The right to freedom of expression is to ensure that all people are able to express dissent against powerful interests without retribution. So some people claim that this right means they can say virtually anything, whether it's fake or abusive. Defamation and incitement to violence notwithstanding. So I think it's important that we hold that rights are not limitless. Rights come with responsibilities, and they have to be balanced with other rights. So one group can't be privileged to have greater rights than another. So freedom of expression does not automatically entitle people to spread false information and hate that creates harm or pushes people off platforms so they don't have a voice. Now, the information challenges we face have been around for centuries, but the scale and the speed and the impact of distorted information is massively higher. To understand this a little better, let's step back and consider how our media, and especially the news landscape, has changed over the last several decades. And when I talk about news, it usually refers to information about current events. You can just understand news as that way. So I will start with my hometown newspaper, the Youngstown Vindicator, Youngstown, Ohio. The Vindicator was an independent, local, family-run newspaper which upheld much of what we rely on for our news. Lots of local information and local commentary on national news, as well as strong investigative reporting that kept local authorities accountable and transparent, including investigations against the mafia and the Ku Klux Klan. We had kind of an exciting city. Like most newspapers, it was published once a day, and local journalists researched and wrote the articles. They were fact-checked, and they were edited. You would see all the news. You open it up, not just one article. The family had to close the paper in 2019, after 150 years, you can see. There were some poor business decisions, but the major factors were that its main sources of income dried up. First, people no longer subscribed to the print edition or the digital edition because they could get online news for free. And the second was that advertising income dried up as advertisers went to other digital platforms with higher views. So it's just one newspaper from a town that only locals visit. So why did this get covered by The Guardian in the UK? Because this was one more in a major trend of individually owned papers closing, but then being bought up by a larger media company. So the Youngstown Vindicator still exists, but the current owner is a regional media publisher with a number of other media brands. It takes less from original reporting, more news from pooled stories, and it has a very different editorial slant. So the trend is news agency ownership is increasingly concentrated. And simply stated, ownership can determine how news is reported, both in quality and bias. So this is not necessarily independent media, even if the name seems to be local or one that you would trust all the time. Quality public interest news is expensive. You need qualified journalists and their expenses to travel and research. You need quality researchers and editors, and you need time to verify and format. There is even more pressure on content now with 24-hour news cycles. And all of this happens when 50% of news advertising revenue globally has gone to Facebook and Google. And many people don't feel they need to pay subscriptions because they can find news online for free. Now, Canada has a unique response to this, and the law to try to address some of this imbalance in funding is what I would consider positive and would like to see more of. But accompanying the global trend is the growth of small, even individually run media sites that can look professional but have vastly varying interests and quality. And then you put onto this the algorithms, social media algorithms, and the sheer quantity of information that's out there. And that means that your own information window can be more a reputation of the kinds of things that you usually look at. And then you start to believe that that's the whole reality that's out there. The change in our digital consumption of news and the push to make things more entertaining or shocking to get more views has also blurred the line for many people that all news sources are not equal. So I think everyone recognizes that there is a political bias from extreme left to extreme right. But the other difference is between original factual reporting or balance, or having analysis based on facts, or opinion, or just making it up. So to start recognizing misinformation and disinformation, you need to have an understanding of these two levels and how to check your sources. The mediabiasfactcheck.com gives details of ownership and bias that you can check your own sources. You will have a copy, as Thérèse says, of these slides afterwards, and you can look at those links and get those links then. But to make things more confusing, there are sites that claim to be fact checkers, and they actually just continue to push particular biases and claims. So here's one I came across, calls Just Facts Daily, just the facts. So it sounds very good, and it, makes a lot of claims about how good it is, how it checks its facts. But how did I decide this was not a fact-checking site? First of all, I think the claims that it said it was investigating had all a particular bias. And if you read it, they would have lots of links, like fact checkers usually do. But those links didn't actually back up the assessment it was making, if you actually click the links. It's also not clear who's behind the site. So most fact-checking organizations will indicate whether a university or a media agency or a nonprofit is behind it, and they will mention more about who is actually reviewing the facts, and this one doesn't. And they also have just a lot of claims about following robust fact-checking standards and have a high reputation. And in fact, there are just so many claims that you just wonder, why do you protest so much, So these are all little signs that not is all that it seems. Now, accompanying all of this is, of course, the so-called social media and the speed with which information, and especially extreme, shocking, highly entertaining posts goes. And the algorithms in our social media and other digital platforms, which keep giving you more of what you are looking at, which means people can go down rabbit holes fairly rapidly. And something we need to always keep in mind is that when something is free, you are the price. Your data, in particular, for social media, for most of these digital communication, if something is free, they are collecting your data, which helps to feed the targeted advertisements and information, and can also be used by those wanting to influence your behavior. Now, why does all of this matter? It's because you need accurate information to make the right or informed decisions, whether that's purchasing something. If you think about buying a car, would you buy a car from someone you don't know, sight unseen, because they say they have lots of experience and it's a great car? But you would usually do your own research from people or organizations you trust are experts to figure out the best car for you. Or if you're facing a natural disaster, you need accurate information to know how to respond. And you don't need government or emergency services or media trying to counter misinformation, conspiracy theories. You want them just to be relating to the emergency at hand. And that's, and if you want health information, you need accurate information to respond in a way that, is good for your health and not bad for you and for your family. So there are sinister and sophisticated methods that political organizations and governments and foreign influencers use to disrupt national policies and systems, especially at election times, often through fake social media accounts and digital media agencies. So there's this disinformation at misinformation, mistake level to sophisticated campaigns that can really reshape what we see as our reality. And I think this is what many of you are reflecting on when you have been so concerned about the effect of disinformation and misinformation on our societies. So when we try to see how to deal with it, we have to understand why people fall for it. So one could say it's PR and public relations in hyperdrive. The vast quantity surrounds us. It seems realistic. It's often placed strategically to appeal to our emotions of fear or outrage or pleasure. And then when it's compounded with past lies or corruption or discrimination or ineffectiveness, and that's exposed or felt, there's just a decline in trust in general. And just trying to explain the facts to a particular story, while necessary, is not going to solve our information disorder. But let's also think about it's not just something that happens to somebody else. In a polarizing and polarized society, it is particularly easy for us to decide that it's the other side, whichever side that is, that's the one creating and sharing malinformation, whereas we, whoever we are promoting the truth and facts. But we have to face the fact that we're all much more likely to accept something as true if it confirms what we're already thinking. And more, we seem to be in a bubble with like-minded friends, which continues to confirm what we're thinking. And remember that a lot of the fake news disinformation tries to hit emotional triggers. So it might seem particularly important and urgent to share this news. And who has time to check these things anyway? And there seems to be a growing distrust of media that doesn't reflect our own views. And this also goes back to what I was saying about the media landscape and this change of quality of the media landscape in general. But a good public interest media organization is not about confirming your beliefs or phrasing issues how you would phrase them necessarily, but giving you information and facts for you to consider and decide how to respond. So what can we do? So the one thing you can control is yourself. So make sure you can discern what is solid information versus what is questionable, so you can make the right decisions for yourself and for others, and others can see you as a trusted source. I am, for now, perennially suspicious of social media and email. If there is something that nags me, that it seems a bit odd or too good to be true, I take time to figure out if something is real or not. Perhaps it's spelling. Perhaps it just is a word like woke that you wouldn't think Pope Leo would say. And the steps for checking is you look at really what is the source. You make sure you read not just the headline, but what's underneath it. The more extreme or excitable it seems, the more I would question it. You could think about, well, why is somebody sharing it? What's their motivation for sharing it? Is it really to lift up and enhance understanding, or is it just trying to sow a bit of distrust? And then check it against some other 2 to 3 other mainline news or fact-checking sites, just to make sure. The second thing you can do, the second main thing you can do, is financially support news sources you trust and use. This goes for community-based media or national and international news. They all need financial support to continue to report accurately and to keep political, economic, and tech powers accountable. So what else can you do? Well, you can help others one-on-one or in social media. And this does take more nuance, more understanding, more steps. So, and you need to understand that it takes less energy and thought to put something inaccurate or hateful online than it does to craft a thoughtful and accurate reply. So my suggestion is pick your battles. Think about sowing seeds, not just winning an argument. So you ask for evidence, maybe you use some careful humor, find some point of connection. Keep asking people why. Why do you think they would do that? And challenge yourself and challenge others to look at other sources of information, not stay in your particular bubble. And then finally, and this also goes to that concern about our society, is we need to maintain and build community. We need to be thoughtful communicators ourselves. If we're introducing a new policy or a practice in our community that might generate some emotion, we need to be prepared for developments. If inaccurate information goes out there, it's really hard to chase after it. So make sure you have the information right up front. We need to keep our communities connected offline on different topics, shared interests, common problems. I was reading an article yesterday on, someone who was in the Obama administration who goes surfing with a Republican who's a strong Trump supporter. They love surfing. And it's a way of maintaining a friendship and a connection, and they can talk together. And that is so important as we move together because we have to be a community. And so maybe we need to also tackle together how we see the media and remind our community and our Christian community of Paul's exhortation about how we should speak to one another. That we need to build up the community, reflect the community. So I'd like us to take some time in smaller groups. I've kind of shared a broad context, definitions, broad context, media, some steps that we can look at to tackle disinformation, misinformation. What does that all mean to you? So we're going to take about 15 minutes, I think, in the breakout rooms. And what I'd like you to do is to choose one of the statements below. And Michelle's putting this in the chat as well. That really strikes you, speaks to you. and share with your small group why it speaks to you and how it might impact your approach going forward. So if you have 15 minutes, look at how many people you've got in your group and divide your time mentally accordingly so that everybody has a chance to share and to be able to reflect together. Then we'll be able to come back and have some time for feedback on that and some other questions or comments, just in general about misinformation, disinformation.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Okay, folks, it's Michelle speaking, your tech host. I'm going to open all the rooms now.
Lead me into the resources section because, and let me just go there now, actually. Because I'm going to share a few different kind of fact-checking sites. So again, you're going to get these slides and then you can get these URLs. So these are a few that are reputable. They are good. It's always, you can always check in different, because they will do it in different ways. So you can just verify and use ones that are most helpful to you. The Media Smarts fact search is really just it's a search bar, and you just type it in, whatever your query is, and they will draw up from various fact-checking websites what a response might be. AFP Fact Check, Snopes, Full Fact. Full Fact is UK. They are all then verifiable, strong fact-checking organizations that will go through how they have actually fact-checked it, and you can look through that. BBC Verify, as I said before, they would take a particular controversy or image, and then they would go through a rather deep dive of how they go through and verify whether something is AI or not. I would also just say that there are some AI checkers out there, for a text or whatever, and you can put your text in there and it will say, well, it's 90% AI generated. I mean, AI is getting so good that those aren't going to be worthwhile anymore. And sometimes it says it's AI generated and it's actually not. So it's all getting very confusing. And if you really want to go into a deep dive of how to really look at investigative reporting journalism, Bellingcat has both like simple guides of how to check on misinformation, disinformation, but they also do a deep dive and geolocate videos and help to expose misinformation, disinformation. But there are other more perhaps fun things that we could do, when we talk about the difficulty of talking with one another, especially in a community or a church setting. Maybe you need to make it into a game. And so here are a couple that we've also used within our Just Digital course that I'll talk about. I mean, there's the I am a digital justice champion. That's a QR code that goes to a little digital justice quiz about how much do you know about our digital communication world. You can look at Find the Fake on internetmatters.org, which seems to be targeted to children, but actually, it's actually more subtle than that. So that can be kind of fun. Or this, Spotting Bogus Claims, the fact check on YouTube. These are things that you could bring the family or people together to learn more about misinformation, and get people to look them up or have them suggest other ones, and have a discussion about it. So, not trying to put people on the spot about a particular claim, but about how our media is presented, how our information is presented. WICC has some other resources as well. So we have a self-directed, fun online course called Just Digital, which helps us to learn about our digital world from data, Misinformation, Disinformation, and Privacy. That's available in English and French and Spanish at this justdigital.ngo. We also have a publication you can download from the web on digital justice. So that's also very good for a group discussion. It has 6 chapters and discusses some of the ethical issues, some of the larger ethical issues in our digital communication. And again, it's something, it doesn't tackle particular beliefs, but it just has people discuss what our information ecosystem is like. So perhaps it develops a way in which you can talk in a more neutral setting about the issue, how information is affecting the community. The Breaking Down Social Media Divides was something developed by our regional association in Europe, particularly about hate speech. And all of those are in the linked through the URL that Michelle has just put in the chat. Thank you very much. And then I would just say, as we're closing our time together, that there are the 3 key elements to keep in mind is, that we need to maintain trust, to build trust. We need to foster learning. We need to have a sense of openness. And we need to protect and promote our community. So the trust, the learning, the community are kind of the 3 concepts to kind of keep in mind when we're dealing with our information out there and when we're addressing the issues of misinformation and disinformation. I just want to thank you for your attention, your participation, your sharing today. It has also deepened my understanding and approach, and it's also inspired me how you're taking some of this forward. Feel free to contact me, my email's there, or look at WAC and the resources that we have online. And I will stop there and turn it back over to Thérèse.
Well, Sarah, thank you very much. You have offered good information. You have offered things to for us to reflect on. I imagine that everybody has found something that confirmed what they believed and something that's challenged them. I know that based on Phyllis's comments that we're going to have conversations about where we, how we support news with the money that we have available to offer. And so personally, it's made a difference for me as well. So thank you very much. Thank you for your generosity with the information and for everybody who's here, just you know you will be receiving a follow-up email that will include a link to the video. It will include the slideshows, and you'll have clickable links as well. And there's also a feedback form, and I'll invite I think Michelle is going to put that in if she hasn't already. There's a link to the feedback form and invite you to fill that out now if you have time. There will also be a link to that feedback form. It's very brief. There's 3 questions. What did you find most helpful? What did you find least helpful? And what suggestions do you have for further workshops? There's also a place to put other comments, and your name is optional. So please do, if you have anything at all that you would like to say about this, please do fill that in and expand if our questions don't touch on your question or comment, expand on that in the comments section. So thank you all for participating in this workshop, and thank you to the Discipleship and Justice Commissions who are offering donation to WACC